What's up, everybody? If you don't know who I am, my name is John Dewberry, and I have a message for you guys. It's been a minute since I've done one of these videos. I used to do them a lot more often, or a little bit more often, a couple years ago. But I had been feeling like God had been telling me to just be quiet for a minute. So that's what I did. And recently, over the past maybe 2 months or so, I've been feeling like I've been pulled in the opposite direction again to speak again. And I've been running from this. I've been scared. I've been nervous. And I'm at this point now where I think if I don't get this out, it's going to burn me up and consume me inside. So here I am today giving you that message. So who is this message for? It's for people who believe in God of the Hebrew Bible, people who are confused about God of the Hebrew Bible, people who don't believe in the God of the Hebrew Bible, and people who believe in a different God. I believe it's for everybody. There is a holistic type of element to the message, so no matter where you fall on that spectrum, I believe this message is for you. My main message and my beginning message will be dealing with the Hebrew Scriptures. But so I'm just asking everybody to kind of just hear me out until the end. So I would like to begin by telling you a story about a book in the Old Testament that is the Book of Lamentations. Now, if you're not familiar with some of the stories of the Hebrew Scriptures, it's okay. I'm going to hopefully fill in enough of the gaps for you to kind of get my overall point. So don't worry about that. So basically, the Book of Lamentations, it's not a feel-good book. It's actually quite sad. So let's just start there. So the Book of Lamentations is basically a poetry book that's written by an anonymous author who survived the destruction that was done by Babylon and to the city of Jerusalem and led them to their exile. And what this poet is doing in it is they're looking back and reflecting on all the destruction that was just done to them. And that the story is actually told in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 24 through 25, and the book of Jeremiah, chapter 52. So this was the most destructive, the most catastrophic thing that ever happened to the Jerusalem and the people of Jerusalem up to this point. So a little bit of history is so Abraham, God had promised Abraham and his descendants that the nations, first of all, that they would have the land and that the nations would be blessed through them. And fast forward hundreds of years, you have King David, who's a descendant of Abraham, and he wins a bunch of battles. He sets up Jerusalem as the capital city, and then from him you have the royal line of kings like King Solomon, King Hezekiah, and also God's presence was there in the temple. So a lot of Israel's history, I say Israel and Jerusalem, I mean the same thing, sorry, but their history had been made. A lot of the history had been made up to that point, over 500 years of history, and it was just gone like that. When Babylon came and destroyed it, was just all of a sudden just gone. So of course, this brought about the most unspeakable, the most devastating type of trauma that you can think of to every level of the human experience: relational trauma, spiritual trauma, physical trauma, psychological trauma, emotional trauma. So what the Book of Lamentations is it's a memorial and about the pain and the confusion that the Israelites were experiencing when they fell to Babylon. So here's a verse from the Book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verses 35 through 36. If people crush underfoot all the prisoners of the land, if they deprive others of their rights in defiance of the Most High, if they twist justice in the courts, doesn't the Lord see all these things? So there are a lot more of lament poems in the book of Psalms, actually. And actually, there are more psalms of lament than any type of psalm in the book of Psalms. And what they do is they ask God for help in times of deep distress and despair, and they ask God for God's help and intervention from great loss, from failures, from sorrow, and they ask for a rescue from their enemies. And they're meant to be individual and both communal, and sometimes both. So they basically do three things. They address God, they describe their complaint, and they request for God's help. So here's a lament psalm from the book of Psalms, chapter 13, verses 1 through 2. It says, "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me?" There's another song, chapter 12, I went backwards. Verses 1 through 3. It says, "Help, Lord, for no one is faithful anymore. Those who are loyal have vanished from the human race. Everyone lies to their neighbor. They flatter with their lips but harbor deception in their hearts. May the Lord silence all flattering lips and every boastful tongue." These lament poems, they're forms of objection and protest. And what they do is they draw in everybody's attention. They draw in God's attention. And they bring to the forefront all of the pain and the suffering in the world and the injustice that should not be tolerated. Lamentations chapter 2, verses 11 through 12. "I have cried until the tears no longer come. My heart is broken. My spirit is poured out in agony as I see the desperate plight of my people. Little children and tiny babies are fainting and dying in the streets. They cry out to their mothers, 'We need food and drink.' Their lives ebb away in the streets, like the life of a warrior wounded in battle. They gasp for life as they collapse in their mother's arms." These lament poems are a way of processing emotion. They are a way to vent their anger and their pain and confusion at the pain and suffering in the world. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, if we're being completely honest, when we look out into this world and see all the suffering and injustice and just the tragedies that's going on that should not be happening, it makes us question God. And it makes us question His character and His promises. And none of this is looked down upon in the Bible. Dr. Tim Mackey from the Bible Project uses the term sacred dignity, and I really like that. These poems give a sacred dignity to human suffering. And if we are to believe that the Hebrew Scriptures are human and divinely inspired, the idea is that they go hand in hand, then we are to believe that these human words of suffering that are addressed to God have become God's word back to His people. So poetry uses different types of strategies and methods to get its point across, and the Book of Lamentations does the same thing. It uses different types of strategies. But in the first chapter, it uses the strategy of personification. And so the city of Jerusalem is actually depicted as Lady Zion. And she's a widow, she's raped, she's exploited, she's suffering from hunger, she's crying for help and looking for comfort, but no one would help her, and she's being taken advantage of, basically, and she cries to God for help, and she doesn't get it. Lamentations chapter 1, verse 16. "For all these things I weep. Tears flow down my cheeks. No one is here to comfort me. Any who might encourage me are far away. My children have no future, for the enemy has conquered us." So the Book of Lamentations, it can teach us how to speak the biblical language of lament, and this is an essential part to dealing with grief. And what it does is it allows us to just fully just face our pain and name it. It's like suffering in silence is not encouraged at all. And learning how to lament, learning how to pray, learning how to grieve, these are all essential things that are needed to get through this journey of life. And it's an essential part of faith in our walk with God. Why am I telling you this story? Basically, man, we are seeing a lot right now in the news cycle. It's just a lot going on. Mass shootings here in America, disease, wars, women's rights being stripped away, just natural disasters. Just it's a lot going on, and what we're seeing a lot in particular is a lot of death. I personally believe we've been desensitized for a while. I mean, at this point, it's just like, I don't know if there's another way to be. Like, it's just how it is now. But I do believe that it's getting worse, and it's heightening our anxiety. And here's why. So, exposure to violent imagery on the media can cause symptoms that are extremely similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, which of course, PTSD heightens your anxiety. So the frequency at which we experience something can actually lessen our sensitivity to it. So if we're seeing death regularly, we can actually become desensitized to it, right? But this can affect the way we empathize, the way we mourn, and the way we grieve. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying desensitization, I struggle with that word. I'm not saying that it's an inherently bad thing. Here's a quote. Desensitization can be used to treat phobias, fears, or other mental health disorders. It can help train your brain to remove the anxiety or the fear that comes with a trigger-inducing situation, such as seeing a spider, driving, or getting a vaccine. So it has its benefits. The problem that I am addressing is perpetual desensitization. I don't believe that it's healthy for us to do this with like seemingly no end, because we've just been reading these news headlines and moving on for years, and society doesn't teach us how to really process our emotions. Instead, we're told things like mind over matter, suck it up, or just keep going, or you're weak, don't feel your feelings that you're feeling. Like, it's like, what? Especially as men, it's like, you better not be crying, bro. You feeling your feelings? You feeling your feelings? Are you kidding me? Like, that's essentially, that's what it is. It's like, bro, I'm a human. Let me cry, fam. But it's wild, and not realizing the whole time that our emotions are energy, and it's trying to push up and push out and express itself. But when you suppress it, that's literally so damaging that it literally puts stress on your mind and your body. A lot of us, myself included, we will talk to our family about these things. We'll talk to our friends. We'll talk to our partners. We'll talk to our parents. We'll talk to our therapists, which are all great, great things. Don't hear me wrong. Like, those are great things. We don't stop doing that. But we forget about God. I know I do. And he actually wants you to draw near to him during times like these. He wants to hear from you. Just please don't forget about him. Here's a quote. Current neuroscience suggests that the more emotions and conflicts a person experiences, the more anxiety they feel. That's due in part to the vagus nerve, one of the main emotional centers of the body. It responds to emotions triggered in the midbrain by sending signals to the heart, lungs, and the intestines. These signals ready the body to take appropriate and immediate action in the service of survival. This means our bodies are ready to react to perceived danger before we are even aware of it on a conscious level. This means our emotions are not under our conscious control. Here's another quote. Combating death desensitization requires therapeutic intervention. One common therapeutic intervention uses regression. This includes creating a therapeutic experience in which desensitized feelings can become reconnected to experiences and circumstances. Though it brings negative emotions along with the positive ones, this can help people with death desensitization return to a healthy relationship with loss. Allowing ourselves to feel sad, to mourn loss, to validate our anger, all of these things will lead us to the knowledge of knowing that these are natural experiences, and these are part of the journey of the human experience. Quick story. I remember when I first went to therapy, day one. I walked in there, and of course they asked you, why are you here? And I was like, I think I'm a sociopath. And she was like, why? I was like, I'm doing things and behaving in certain ways, and I don't feel bad for it. And she was like, you're not a sociopath. I was like, how? What do you mean? She said, if you were a sociopath, you wouldn't be in here in therapy today. Well, over time, what I learned was I was just suppressing my emotions. And I had gotten so good at it that I was numb. Like, I didn't feel much anymore. And I was kind of just walking around like a zombie, like a living dead. Like, But I was feeling those emotions. I would do things and feel bad, but I would, nope, don't feel that. I don't feel that either. Nope, don't feel that sadness. Don't feel that regret. Just like, ooh, I could dodge it, bro. I don't feel that. No, just hit me on the shoulder. Nah. Like, that's unhealthy. The other day, it had got so bad that I literally thought I'm just a bad person. And it's like, no, you feel these things, man. You just suppress it. You're suppressing them, and they are very detrimental to your well-being. Then once I figured out that's what it was, I started crying so much, bro. Like, like I used to just cry. I was a big crybaby, bro. Like, I wasn't used to crying, and then I just couldn't help it. I'm like, bro, you've been holding this in for years, bro. Like, your tears is like, bro, we ready, bro. We've been right here for a very long time, bro. So, if you don't have God figured out yet, I think it would be kind of pointless for you to just be like, well, figure it out, just figure it out. It's kind of pointless. I do encourage you that if there's room in your heart to seek, I do encourage you to do that because I believe so strongly in this, so strongly. I would defend this to the day I die. So if there's room in your heart, I encourage you to seek. But I do understand that we are all at different stages, and I was once there. So here's my advice. Create a therapeutic space, like the quote I read from Dr. Bruno. Have you ever screamed in the pillow? It's a serious question. Scream in the pillow. Try that. Like, get in the room, make it quiet, and just, like, whatever you gotta do, bro. Like, because your body needs that release. Like, I've done that before. It helps. You ever had, to, take a dump, all day? Like, you were holding it all day? You know that feeling. We all know that feeling. And when you finally make it to the bathroom, you like that release. That's essentially what's happening. Like you just need a way to just let that out. Sorry, that illustration was a little bit, but it works. Of course, there's other things you can do to relieve stress, and like yoga and taking walks and things like that, which I recommend. But I'm trying to specifically make a moment to face what's going on in the world, and you just create a therapeutic space, whatever that means to you. Whatever, get in a quiet room, lighting some candles, taking a bath. It means different things for different people. Somebody might go in the park. I don't know. Just taking a moment to just sit in it for a second. For those who do believe in the God of the Hebrew Bible, or those who are curious, you may not have it all figured out, but you have a certain hunger, or even if you're confused, man. And here's my advice to you: if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling forgotten, helpless, go to God, run to Him, and God wants you to do this. The Bible encourages this. Now, I know that prayer is weird for some people, which I completely understand. It's something that I'm still figuring out. It's a journey. But don't worry, you don't have to be perfect to do this. best advice I can offer to you in this time is, if you ever done yoga, like, and you know how they ask you to center yourself and focus on your breathing, so that becomes like your main focus as you're doing yoga. Make God your focus. I don't know if that completely makes sense, but when I pray, I just focus on God. It's just, I'm saying things out loud, or sometimes in my head, but I try to do it out loud more often. And I'm just directing my energy towards God. Like, I don't know if that completely makes sense or helps, but it's the best I got right now. I'm going to read to you guys this last quote. Lament gives us permission to protest life's difficulties, to scream, to cry, to vent, to plead, and to complain in the presence of God and others. It lets us ask the hard questions without condemnation. Why did this have to happen? How could you allow it? Where are you in the midst of it? It allows weeping without explanation. It might be messy and uncomfortable, but it's the first step towards healing. Thank you to everyone who made it to the end of the video. You know, I really appreciate it. I hope I said something that was worthwhile and that you could take away and that it will help you. If this has helped you, and you know somebody who may need it, please share it with them. That is my only request, just to share it with somebody who you think can use it. There will be a part 2. I'm not sure when yet, but there is a 4th step that I left out, actually, of the lamenting structure. So they address God, they describe their complaint, they request for God's help, and the 4th one that I left off is they express trust in God. And that is because the Jewish people had a story in their head that centered their faith and their hope in God. And when they looked out into the city and looked out and saw darkness and seemingly no hope all around, they still managed to have hope. That's because they had a story in their head. So we'll get to that in the next next video. So yeah, once again, man, thank you guys so much. I love each and every one of you, and yeah, see y'all next time.